Good afternoon. This is Glenn P. Klinger III, and I want to welcome you to my presentation called Creating the No Turnover Workplace, based on principles from my book, Integrity, Character, Leadership. Before going any further, I wanted to provide you with some insight into my background. I hold both a BS and MS degree from Florida Institute of Technology. I spent about 20 years at various corporations in management roles. I'm an avid writer and have been writing for about the same amount of time. I've written both fiction and nonfiction works, along with had articles published in Inbound Logistics magazine, along with on various industry websites. I founded the Klinger Group with my wife Alicia in 2016 to provide consulting services to companies in the supply chain industry. Besides writing, I've been teaching at the college level since 2016 in the area of operations, supply chain, and logistics management. I'm also a subject matter expert for SNHU in that area. I have a Six Sigma certification. I'm Green Belt and Black Belt certified, Lean certified, Scrum certified, and I hold a CSCP certification. I want to talk today about employee turnover. Employee turnover costs money. Businesses are struggling to find workers of any kind, and holding on to the ones that they have is a challenge. In many industries, the turnover is sky high. I spent some time in the restaurant industry as a manager, and at one point, our turnover for managers was 400%. In the trucking industry, where I spent decades, long haul trucking turnover rates were well over 100%. That's expensive. Turnover costs companies 1.5 to 2 times their salaries annually. The trick is companies need to find a way to attract and hire and train and retain the best workers. But how can they do it? I believe it all comes down to the management style of your managers. And that's what I want to talk about today in regards to turnover. Turnover rates based on various industries are quite alarming across the board. Manufacturing at almost 40%, construction, approaching 60%. As I'd mentioned earlier in the previous slide, the transportation industry, when I was in that, the turnover was well over 100% for long haul truck drivers, and the restaurant industry was extremely high. So, looking at these numbers, there is a problem, and we need to find a way to address the problem. Now that we've determined that turnover is a problem in all industries, what does it actually cost the companies, and what can they do to fix it? Engaged employees are ones that come to work, feel appreciated, do a good job, and if you keep your employees engaged, they're 87% less likely to want to leave. These companies with engaged employees have lower turnover and generate about 2.5 times more revenue than competitors. That's a big advantage. Companies with disengaged employees, employees that come to work, don't want to be there, slack, they just don't do their job, that costs the U.S. between 450 and 550 billion dollars a year. How can you reduce turnover? I believe it comes down to better training of your frontline managers. When you take a manager that's transitioning from an independent contributor role into a management role, they need to receive training. And one study cited that less than a third of all U.S. companies had even conducted an assessment training to try and understand the needs of their managers for training. And another study said that 58% of managers never received any formal training at all, and 26% said they felt unprepared for management. So, given that management has such a large impact on turnover, it's important to understand principles that these managers can use in order to be better at what they do and to retain the employees that you have. That is the reason in 2022 I decided to write a book on leadership. I grew up in West Virginia. My father was a very, very successful businessman, and I had the opportunity to watch him when I grew up lead others. He was an exceptional leader. He was an exceptional manager, an exceptional businessman. And I found myself being exposed to a management seminar every day. As other companies experience high turnover, my father basically had none at his company. And when I progressed into a management role, I realized that the things that I was doing, I was having the same effect. I was having low turnover, I was having happy employees, and it's just because of the way that I was taught to manage them. I asked my brother Robert. He worked under my father also, a lot longer than I did, and had a very successful career in South Carolina and at various large corporations, as well as in West Virginia, where we were from. And it's funny, when I asked him to compare notes on his management style and my management style, they were basically the same. We had grown up, in the same household, watching my father manage people. And that management style and those things that he did were the backbone of why we were successful. And I've written a lot of books, and I just wanted to share this with the people who get into that management role that don't feel comfortable. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's the points that I'm going to be making today throughout this presentation. One exercise I want everybody to do is take a minute and take a piece of paper and write down the 5 reasons you would leave a job. When people leave, oftentimes we don't know why, and exit surveys are really useless because people don't really want to say anything. They don't want to cause any problems, so they just say nothing. So write down the 5 reasons you would leave a job in the order of importance. So number 1 would be the most important, down to number 5. And remember to consider all aspects of this decision. I know it's hard when you're not the one actually leaving, but think about it. If you were to leave your job, why would you do that? And write it down, take a minute, and then we'll discuss it on the next slide. Now that you've finished your list, compare it to the results of this survey. It surprised me when I read it that salary wasn't number 1, but alternative job opportunities and the availability of those was the number 1 choice, along with quality of coworkers, working conditions, right down the line to burnout, which was number 7, and number 8 was conflict between work and family. People want that work-life balance. They want to feel appreciated. They want to feel like the company understands the sacrifices they're making. Think back to when you were given your first job. More than likely, you were put in an individual contributor role and given a task to do, and your boss would oversee your tasks, and you were responsible for yourself. Well, now you're given a promotion and you're a manager. Suddenly you're responsible for the work of others and the jobs that they do. It's a big responsibility. Take a minute to think of some of the managers that you worked for. Were they good leaders? Were they good at what they did? Were they good managers? What would you improve upon? What would you change? Because basically what it is, you're moving from a player to a coach. The people that you may have worked with in your department, you may be over top of now. They may work for you. Friendships have to go on the back burner. You're now responsible for their performance evaluations, what work you give them, possible discipline or termination. That's right. You may be asked to terminate somebody that you were good friends with. It's tough being a manager. It's tough being the guy on the island. You're basically by yourself, and it's a lonely position at times. But this is your chance to lead. This is your chance to make the company better and in turn help make the lives of your employees better. The big question is, why do some managers struggle with retention? Do you have a personal code by which you live? By a personal code, I mean something that you find important and something that you use to guide your daily decision making. My personal code was, I will not lie, cheat, or steal, and I will not tolerate anyone that does. I also feel the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done to you, is important. Treat people like you would want to be treated. Major Dick Winters, who earned the Distinguished Service Cross on D-Day, had a different code. Strive to be a leader of character, competence, and courage. We must strive each day to try and be better leaders. But the big question is, what is a leader? John Quincy Adams said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So ask yourself, what kind of leader would you be? If you've never been in a management role, you've never been in a leadership role at all, what kind of leader would you be? And when you look at managers and you look at leaders, as I mentioned earlier, it's really two different things. And many managers are deficient in a lot of areas. And there's very few that are exceptional managers and exceptional leaders. And that comes down to how they deal with people. Management, leadership is a people business. And you have to become better at dealing with people in order to become better at both. One thing I want you to remember is leadership is a privilege. My father taught me that. In order to be successful, you must remember that this opportunity is an honor. But you're now the coach. And you are helping those employees be better at what they do. You're motivating them and you're guiding them each and every day. If something goes wrong, own it. Take responsibility for it. You're in charge. If the team is successful, then the team gets the credit. It's no longer about you. It's about the unit, the group. And you must be willing to understand that. Finger pointing and assigning blame when things go wrong is a sign of a bad leader, not a good one. And remember that you got to put your ego aside, and success of the team is paramount. You know, turnover is not measured sometimes by companies, or they just don't really pay attention. But when you lose an employee, that's a personal failure on your part. There's companies that I've worked for that their turnover under certain managers was extremely high. And yet they looked at it as normal attrition. But when you're losing key people and you're not stopping to understand why, then you're failing. Because when you lose an employee, that's a personal failure on your part. If an employee has a problem in one role, help them find where they fit. That's your job. Help them use their abilities to their fullest. That helps them, that helps you, and it helps the company succeed. As I mentioned earlier, my father was an exceptional leader. He was able to build rapport with people almost instantly. And when you look at the definition of rapport, it's building a close and harmonious relationship with people or groups. There's 4 steps in that process. As with any relationship, you need to build trust. You need to be dependable. You need to be somebody that those people can count on. You need to be honest with them. Tell them the truth. If there's a problem, communicate it. Shoot straight. Tell them the way it is. People appreciate that. And if you do those things, you'll get respect. In order to get respect, you've got to give respect. But if you do those things, there's something pretty amazing that comes out of it. You end up getting loyalty from people. And loyalty from employees is something you can't put a price on. It is priceless. There were people that worked for my father for 30 years. They came over and we had family outings together, and they would take me to school, and one even taught me how to drive a 5-speed pickup truck. Those people were like family, and loyalty is important. Remember, management's a people business, so you need to get to know your employees and engage with them. Failing to engage will result in disconnected employees and eventually turnover. Daily interaction is key. Getting to know them, getting to understand them, that's what builds rapport and trust. Management is a people business, and it's a relationship. The employee manager relationship is a relationship that must be nurtured, and in order to be successful at lowering your turnover, you as a manager need to work on that relationship every day. Time. All of us, that's our most precious commodity. As employees come to work, we have to remember they're exchanging the most precious commodity they have, time, for a paycheck. You can stand there and yell orders at them all day. You can, sit there and browbeat them all you want, and that's not going to make them respect you. Respect given. Understand that they're giving up something in exchange for a paycheck. And your frame of reference will completely change. Ask somebody instead of telling them. You'd be amazed what people will do if you just ask. You just ask politely. Could you please do this? Could you please do that? When you get a minute, could you do this? When you get a minute, could you do that? People will eventually respect the way you manage them. They will enjoy coming to work because they know that you're not that guy that they come into work and they've got to be walking on eggshells because you're that manager that might be in a really bad mood and yelling at them all day. Leave your attitude outside. When you walk into work, put on a smile and manage your employees with respect. And if you do, then they'll be loyal. And loyalty is priceless, and your turnover will drop. I think this is one of the best quotes ever. General Omar Bradley said about loyalty: a leader should possess human understanding and consideration for others. By these means, their leader will get maximum effort out of each of them. He will also get loyalty. Loyalty, as I mentioned before, is extremely important. And I also mentioned about trading time for money. Never forget that. These people are sacrificing to come to work. So remember that and keep that in perspective. The days of the my way or the highway are long over. When I can remember as a young athlete, coaches barking at it's my way or the highway, get out of here if you don't like it. And in this day and age with high turnover, when you ask somebody to leave, they probably will. So if you can keep them engaged and keep them happy, you can keep an employee, and that's very valuable to the company. And it means profits over time, and that's good for everybody. Caring means getting to know your employees. My father once gave me a great tip. He told me, remember one key thing about every employee in your charge. So maybe they have a child that plays Little League, or they have a wife that's going to school at night to earn a degree, or maybe they have a hobby that they like. And so when you're around that person, just stop and ask them, hey, how's that going with your wife's, education, or how's that going with your son's Little League? And it's amazing. Their faces light up. And I don't know how many times I had people tell me, I can't believe you remembered that. But it's important in establishing some type of rapport. People that work for you have lives, and you have to remember that the things that are important to them, may escape your attention, but you have to make time to remember those things. And you may get to the point where you don't know the names of all the employees in your charge, but you have to try. You have to make an effort to know names and go by, shake their hand in the morning, tell them good morning, call them by name. Makes a big difference to people. Some people it doesn't matter, but most people it does. And it helps build rapport. So to recap, caring means getting to know your employees. A name goes a long way in developing trust. If you want respect, you've got to give respect. Ask, don't tell. Ask. Rapport takes time to build a strong relationship. Learn at least one important fact about each employee and understand that the employee has skin in the game and they are trading time for money. That's very important. Some key points to remember as we close. Leadership is a privilege. And just remember, every employee is important. Whether it's the janitor or the CEO, everybody has a role to play, and it's important. And treat everybody the same. Don't ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do yourself. Remember, as a leader, don't be a finger-pointing micromanager. And if something goes wrong, take the blame. It's your responsibility to take the blame. But don't take any of the credit. If the team's successful, the team gets the credit. Set a good example. There's a great story in the book about setting a good example. Build rapport and recognize talent. That will build a winning team. I have another great section in the book about utilizing process improvement to grow your business. During my time at some of the companies I worked at, I used my Six Sigma skills to improve their processes. And it's really surprising what you can accomplish when you do that. Be positive. Remember, it's just a job. Come in with a smile on your face. Do a good job. You'll be a lot happier. Thanks for listening, and I enjoyed presenting a small excerpt from my book, Integrity, Character, Leadership. If you want to order a copy, you can go to my website, glennpklinger3rd.com. You can also go to Amazon Books A Million, and it's available on Audible also. But if you're experiencing high turnover at your company, this book will help. There's some very good stories in there that drive home the principles that I try to explain to new managers. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for listening.